Every time I do this, it says it's live. I'm just going to trust it. Because every time I do this, I'm sitting here going, are we live? Anyway, here we are, my friends. We are broadcasting live stream number 7, I believe. And we're going to answer a lot of your questions that were asked weeks back and haven't been answered yet. Let's see, how many people? Where's that number at? Okay, we only got 53. So, you know, wait till some more people come on board, and then we'll open in prayer. Next week, we will, Abba willing, we'll be having Brad Scott back. I can't wait for that because, boy, oh boy, you know, let me tell you something, my friends, about Brad Scott. Whenever he says something that seems unusual to you, rest assured that he never makes things up. He never comes up with anything that is not scripturally based and sound in Abba's word. So Brad is a very unusual person. He's not like any other teacher you've seen on YouTube. He's not new at this. And I mean, you know, even in the sense of 5 or 10 years, his studies go back more than 30 years. And he's the kind of person who will never say anything unless he is absolutely sure he can back it up in very sound ways with scriptures. So when he says stuff like, you know, he thinks Satan planted the tree of the knowledge of the difference between good and evil, don't take it lightly. Back up and trust that he is being very sound scripturally, and just pursue it for your own satisfaction by asking the questions that are on your heart. For me, when he said that Yeshua said, any plant, meaning any tree that my Father did not plant, will be uprooted. Right there, Yeshua said that there are trees, there are plants that the Father did not plant, and they will be uprooted. They will not be seen when we go home and all of this darkness is done away with. So, and then last time, caregiver really brought in a second witness when she brought up the parable of the tares and the wheat. The tares were planted by a stranger in the darkness when nobody was looking, you know. So Brad's wonderful. We're going to pursue a lot of questions with him. Okay, we've got 116 here with us now.
Can I add just a little bit about Brad?
Sure.
You're saying trust him. It's kind of based on his odiot understanding. You know, to trust him and look at your English, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
But you have to step back and say, wow, Brad really is taking an approach that we can't look up and refute.
No, you can. It's not based on odiot. His understanding, you know, his doctorate is in the biblical languages, meaning Aramaic, Hebrew, and Greek. He is an expert in those languages, and it's not so much the odiot as it is the Aramaic or the Hebrew or the Greek, depending on where you are. And you're right, little girl, in that it's the English that we can't trust.
Exactly, that was my point. The odiot, I meant more the Hebrew and the original language that we just don't have access to, like Dr. Brad Scott.
Yeah. Anyway, we're up to 122. Okay, my friends, who's hanging out over here? Lucas Williams says, Alan. Let us know where you're from, my friends. Jeff from San Diego, very cool. It's nice to know where people are coming from. Matt McNelly from Colorado. Shalom, Alan from Craig in Colorado. Well, Craig, what are you doing with Matt McNeely's, or is that McNeely? What are you doing with his handle, man? Paul is here. I didn't see him. Yeah, and the roots of the words. Robert's here. Michigan, Mage Caster Max. Hey, Max from Michigan. Yeah, so Ruth is here from Colorado. Hound is here from Southern California, Murrieta, California. Nina from Australia, how cool. Wisconsin says, hey. Heather. Hey, Billy from Tom's River. Got some friends down there. Anyway, let's stop chatting. We've got 136. And let's bow our hearts, my friends. And let's pitch this tent with our beloved Elohim and make it the special fellowship that we know it will be. Abba, Father, we come before you, Father, to worship you, to praise you, to fellowship with you, Abba, with your beloved Yachid, our Adon Yeshua, and with your indwelling Ruach HaKodesh this day, Abba, as we all come together in the interest of you answering the questions of Yeshua's lambs through me and caregiver. As we give this day, Father, to you, Yeshua, and your indwelling Ruach HaKodesh, praying in Yeshua's Kodesh name, Yahweh, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh Echad. And all the Kodeshim said,
Amen.
Shalom, my friends. I have a list of questions that we still haven't gotten to, got pages of them. And I'm going to go through some of these while caregiver watches the chat and brings up any questions you have there. This goes all the way back to live stream number 1 from Rick. He says, if pets of believers go in the rapture, what if they're bad? What if they attack people? If pets go to heaven, are they also judged for sin? What about the animals who are not owned by believers? What will happen to them at the rapture? Gee whiz, Rick, do you think I have answers to everything? The answers to all these questions really are, I don't know nothing. We have to assume, animals, they're held accountable. They're not stupid. There are animals that murder, and they may not be in heaven for that. But they're judged, and whatever. There's a lot of things, my friends, that we can't find answers for now. If it's not in the Word, we don't know. We can pray about it. But even then, if you get, I had a dream, and my dog was wearing a crown, that means nothing. Dreams, visions, ideas, these can all be total illusions delivered to people by Hashatan, the master of illusions. So, when it comes to a lot of these things, just trust Abba that, in terms of your pets, in terms of everything and anything, when we go home, there's never going to be less. It's always going to be more. It's always going to be better, never worse, in every sense of anything you're thinking about. In general, people are asking many comments about Ron Wyatt's discovery under Golgotha, blood tested, only had mother's DNA. Thoughts? Well, what other blood would there be? You know, the father of Yeshua was not physical. Miriam was impregnated by the presence, the Ruach. There's no blood there. So it's just, you know, they tested the blood from Ron Wyatt's discovery under Golgotha, and all they found was Miriam's blood. That's just like further confirmation. How cool is that? Tiffany Detzel, you've been waiting, what, 6 months and a half. How do we make sure that we are doing what we are called to do by sharing truth, being the light, and exempling the true walk of a believer, and still being sure that we're doing it in a loving way? I keep thinking of Betty Demers, Patriska saying, Alan Horvath told me to shut up. That seems like, you know, how are we to be sure we're doing it in a loving way? That seems like it should be an easy thing to do. However, sometimes I feel so strongly about something that I get so excited and I come across too strong or arrogant or unloving. That is one reason, Tiff, why we should always pray first. I mean, even if you're standing right in front of a person, you can just be silent for a minute, call out to Abba silently. Oh, Abba, please, you know, help me, guide me, give me, you know, your words to deliver to this person. But, you know, we have to remember that love is not always gentle. Love oftentimes requires a swift kick in the butt or a harsh dealing with someone who needs to, you know, have a cold slap in the face. Sometimes people need to be waked up, and it's harsh, you know. These people that think, oh, you know, quote unquote, God is love, you know, God wouldn't do anything harsh because God is love. These people are insane. Yeah, Elohim is love, but he's a lot more than that, and we don't have a clue about what the fullness of love actually is. We think love is, oh, it's okay, honey. That's not love. A lot of times, that's as wicked as you can possibly be. If somebody's going off in a wrong direction and you tell them, oh, you know, that's okay, you'll be forgiven, you're encouraging them to be wicked. You're encouraging them to continue in darkness. Sometimes the light can be very blinding. So, you know, Tiff, don't worry. You know, if you come across too strong or too arrogant, afterwards, if you're worried about that, you call out to Yeshua, who intercedes for us to the Father, and tell him, say, oh, Yeshua, please intercede for me. I feel like I might have been too strong or too arrogant in this situation. Please heal any wounds I may have placed there. Please remove any stumbling blocks I may have put in front of anyone.
I have trouble with that. If I could break in,
Please
I can be harsh. I think one reason we work together well is we get it. Sometimes love is just harsh. And I can be overly harsh. I can be overly worked up. And it can be difficult.
Well, you know, to a child, a parent oftentimes seems unfairly harsh because a child is not as knowledgeable about truth, you know.
But
So
to Tiffany's question, sometimes just the way you said, I think about how Yahweh promises to make our rough places plain and our crooked places straight. And he can do that. And, you know, he's the I am. He can do that before we screwed it up.
Beautiful point. And that's why, you know, we call out to him and remind him of that. I'm drinking raw coconut water.
Coconut is
Friends, if anyone out there has any kind of an issue with dehydration, which basically everyone who hears my voice is dehydrated. You know, what is it? 80% of everyone on the earth is dehydrated. I got dehydrated last week, and man, I was so tired. I was so weak. I was like, what is going on? And my sister said, you know, maybe coconut water. I said, I'll try anything. Look, I was drinking Fiji water. This is supposed to be one of the best, highest pH and all that stuff. I was drinking plenty of it, and I was getting dangerously dehydrated. I'm older. We get dehydrated even faster when we get older because, you know, everything in the body doesn't perform like it used to. She got me some coconut water off the shelf, you know. I drank one glass, and in 20 minutes, I was out of it. I was talking to Paul Skatarski, you know, Zeus Mossbender channel, and he started laughing. He says, oh, Fiji water, you were drinking dry water.
You weren't out of it. You were out of your dehydration.
Huh?
You weren't out of it. You were out of your dehydration problem.
It was insane, you know. Well, just one glass of the stuff off the shelf. That stuff is not as good as the refrigerated, cool Trader Joe's. You know, they got the coconut water in the refrigerated area. This stuff, there's nothing in here. The stuff on the shelves has been boiled, and there's garbage in it. And even so, it hydrated me in 20 minutes. So now, you know, I still like the Fiji water to quench my thirst, but I didn't know about raw coconut. In fact, I have a what they call a young coconut in my refrigerator. They carve all the brown stuff off of it. Makes it real easy for you to cut into it, and you can drink the coconut water. And then there's like a 1/4 inch of soft, mushy stuff before you hit the hard coconut that's supposed to be really, really healthful.
Lucas tells us that Fiji water has fluoride in it.
Well, look, let me tell you, I am convinced that all the bottled waters in the stores are boiled. The water is boiled. They have nothing in them. They've been boiled, so there's nothing living. They can bottle them all they want and never worry about any bacteria. I mean, come on, I was drinking plenty of Fiji water and I was getting dehydrated because there's nothing in it. Or like you just said, little girl, there's fluoride in it. Please, can we go home? Enough of my rant about dehydration. I'm really dehydrated in the sense of I want to go home. I want water from the river of Chai.
Amen.
I was scaring my daughter 5 years ago when I was in the hospital. I kept saying, I want water from the river of Chai. And at first she would like, she didn't know what to say. Sapphire Throne. How does one pronounce the quote, the peace that surpasses understanding in Hebrew? How does one pronounce the peace that surpasses? And can you expound on what that really is getting at, please? What is shalom that passes understanding? And why does it seem so elusive if he's given it to us as a gift? Well, the fact that he's given it to us as a gift is no reason for it being elusive. It's elusive because our understanding is about, you know, on a scale of 1 to a gazillion, our understanding is at like 0.000003. That's why it's elusive. And mostly because we have Western mindsets and Western ways of thinking. And we think that shalom means peace. Boy, I'm telling you, the English language, shalom does not mean peace. When I say shalom to you, my friends, I am imparting a beracha, a blessing to you of wholeness, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, in every way, shape, and form that you can dream of. Shalom is absolute wholeness, being restored, which we can't even imagine. We don't know what it means to be restored. We would have to know what it was like before the fall. Anyway, and then if you have even a little bit of true shalom, it surpasses all understanding because it doesn't make any sense. It can't make any sense. I have to tell you, my friends, I was talking to Mark Palladino. Those of you who follow me on the Sitting in the Word videos every Saturday, you know the whole deal that's going on between me and my music producer in LA, Mark Palladino. I was talking to him a couple of days ago, and he described the peace that surpasses all understanding. He says, Alan, something weird is going on. And I says, what? He says, I have this peace about me, and it doesn't make any sense. He says, I find it troubling. I find it irritating. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand what's going on. All of a sudden I have this peace. Well, my friends, Chavarim, I asked you weeks back to pray for Mark that he would be given an insatiable appetite for the Father's word. And all of your prayers, the power of prayer is never to be underestimated. He's experiencing your prayers, my friends. All of a sudden, the shalom that the peace that he's experiencing that he doesn't understand is the ruach. The presence of Elohim is around him, and he's feeling it, and it's confusing. I mean, he lives in Los Angeles. He has a life that is so chaotic and stressed out. Unless you live in Los Angeles, you have no idea, or some major city like that. So, he's going through that too. But it's just the shalom from the Father is a gift, and it will always be way beyond our ability to understand, because it's so much bigger than our little pea brains in this three-dimensional way of understanding, especially in the Western way of thinking, can grab. Cami, she says, did you teach, or did I just read somewhere that the Father's name was in the original KJV? And was it about that time his name began being translated out, or did it begin at the beginning? Also, is Psalm 68:4 the only place you know of in the KJV that Yah is in the short version of Yahweh is still not translated out? First of all, why does everybody think like the KJV is the Father's original word, 1611? You can take that book and throw it into a fireplace for all the good it does. The original word of Abba Father from Genesis to Revelation was written in Aramaic Hebrew. End of story. With an Eastern mindset. English, Spanish, German, you name it, ruins it. It takes away from and adds to his word as he commanded us not to ever do. So, did I teach that the Father's name was? No, the Father's name was not in the original KJV or any other English version of the Bible. The Father's name was removed from the Hebrew as well as the Greek Septuagint versions 300 BC, 300 years before Yeshua came. What's his name defiled the temple by slaughtering a pig on the altar, and I can't think of his name, but why even mention it? Abba tells us not to speak the names of demons and fallen angels, so why speak that jerk's name? He defiled the temple, and they passed a law that's known as the ineffable name doctrine. Anyone caught, and this is 300 years BC, more or less, anyone caught speaking or writing or anything else the Father's name, Yahweh, Yod-He, Wah-He, would be killed. So his name was removed, thousands of years ago, the KJV just, it's weird because all of these English translations, if it's a version, I've explained this before, like King James Version, International Version, a version means that some men sat down with the sincere intention to interpret the original Aramaic Hebrew into English or whatever other language. When they looked at that Aramaic Hebrew, the Father's name is there. It was not removed. I'm not sure why. Maybe they got stuff before 300 BC. But the Father's, like if you go to Strong's, you'll see the Father's name in 7,000 places that are not in any Bibles. And it's there as Yod-He, Wah-He in the original Aramaic Hebrew. They usually do modern Hebrew. It should be in the Odiot that I use, the oldest stuff. But it's there. And then Strong's will say, oh, that means Jehovah. Ay, ay, ay. No, it's Yod-He, Wah-He. Where's the J? And they're calling it Jehovah. Where's the J? Where's the V? I wish I could punish somebody. It's Yahweh. Did you say something, babe?
Yeah, I did. On behalf of the chat, I want to give a huge, huge hug and a shout out to Mark Palladino. There are tears of love for him, just coming from your heart to ours and to Abba. And just a big shout out to Mark. We love you, man. We are praying for you. We're thrilled that he's working with you.
I'm telling you, my friends, I told Mark a long time ago, I love you and I can't explain why. There's something so strange about my relationship with Mark Palladino. It goes back to our childhood when we were preteens and we didn't even know that we knew each other. Our parents knew each other. It's so bizarre. The Father is doing this musical project with me and Mark. I don't know what he's up to. I'm just watching. Cindy says, what do you think about Reformed theology, Calvinism, total depravity, limited atonement? I really can't answer your question, Cindy, because I don't know what Reformed theology is. I don't know what Calvinism is. I know that total depravity is satanic. I don't know, whatever that is. Limited atonement, that sounds satanic too. So I don't know. Little girl, do you know what Reformed theology or Calvinism is?
Not well enough to speak to it live without notes.
It sounds like a satanic doctrine, but I can't say for sure. I've never even heard of it. Reformed theology? Well, if you're talking about reforming the Father's word, it's satanic right away, because he says, don't add to or take away from my word. And
it might have to do with the Reformation and Calvinism being predestination versus free will.
I have no knowledge of those things. I've never studied religion. I've never belonged to any religion. And I have no interest in even knowing about it, because why bother? We have his word. That's all we want. Nancy L., how and why does Elohim discipline us? Why? What type of things can we do or not do that would cause his discipline to come our way? Well, you can love him, and that'll cause his discipline to come your way, because he only disciplines the children that he loves. He only disciplines his kids. He doesn't bother with kids that are not his. So, what can we not do? I mean, if you're trying to avoid his discipline, that's not wise. You want his discipline. I don't know if you have any kids or not, Nancy, but if you have any kids, would you want your children to not want you to ever discipline them? Look at it the way you do with any parent-child relationship, and your answer is there. Here's Nancy L. again, but with Johan. Could the Native Americans be Jewish? And if so, how did they get here from the Middle East? I think they went by Pan American Airlines. Can we hear anybody laughing? Yes, I think the Native Americans could be Jewish, because every time, well, of course, I'm looking at Hollywood. Maybe they hire Jews to play Indians, but those Indians always look very Jewish. Their noses are always like, got that crook in it. They look Jewish. They wear tassels, like seat all over the place. It's very possible. So it's possible. I don't know. I don't really care, because, look, I want to talk to Brad about this too, because he was talking about the two seeds. There's only two seeds. One is Yeshua, and the other one is of Hashatan. He says they are not physical seeds. They have nothing to do with bloodlines. He piqued my curiosity when he said that. Now, of course, I know it's true, because Hashatan is not a flesh and bone man, and Yeshua, if you go back to the beginning, was not flesh and blood man. So you're not talking about bloodlines physical. And yet there are these physical bloodlines through the line of David. We know that Yeshua was born according to physical bloodlines. But this whole thing of like, who's Jewish, who's not, what about the people in Israel? Oh, none of them are Jews. Oh, all of them are Jews. This stupid arguments that go on. And I say stupid because these arguments serve nothing but darkness. They get people into confusion. It's the work of Hashatan. The Native Americans, if they believe in Yeshua, bam, they are suddenly Jews. Now, Yeshua, my sovereign, says, who is in the promised land now? A lot of enemies. There's all kinds of people over there. Take a trip. You'll be there. Cindy, can you speak to can you speak about the unpardonable sin, the unforgivable sin? Didn't I do a word study on that one?
You did. You did an excellent word study on the abomination. No, not on the abomination. You did abominations and you did the unpardonable sin.
Okay, Cindy. So do a search on the abomination and on the unpardonable sin, and I already answered your question. Isn't anybody asking questions in the chat, little girl? Or are they all just yelling at each other?
Well, our friend Paul Skatarski said Hollywood only hires union Indians.
I love you, Paul. Terry says, how should we handle nouns in everyday speech that are of pagan origin? Are there any that are not in English? How do we know which words we should replace and which don't matter? Well, by watching my my videos and studying with me, Terry, to answer that question would probably take, I don't know, a couple of years. There's so many. How should we handle nouns in everyday speech that are pagan? You got any ideas on that, little girl?
Well, I think, when we're talking about things that days of the week, months of the year, our hearts are not really in that. We're just communicating that next month we're going to go to the park. But when it comes to worship and words that really our hearts are behind, then it's important, when we're worshiping Abba Father, Yahweh, and digging into his word. If there's a pagan word in that heart sentence, we should probably examine that and do a search in your studies. You'll probably done a word study on that word. But I think it's a matter of common sense. If you're just speaking to communicate to other humans that on Tuesday you're going to take your kids to the park, you don't have to worry about having said something that referred back to Roman something about Tuesday.
That's a really good answer.
I have a really good teacher.
Stop that one, babe. Right on. I mean, there are nouns like God and Lord and, oh, please, and like Jehovah. You're actually cursing the Father with that noun. So, there's not only pagan origin, but certainly satanic. How do we know which words to replace? Well, I mean, I'm telling you them all the time, don't ever say Jehovah, try your best to get rid of God and Lord. I mean, I use God a lot of times too. A lot of times I'll find I'll be like, oh my God, I still enjoy that phrase because it's got it's good emphasis on, it's just a habit, but it's good for us not to, the Father tells us, don't let your lips speak their names. They remove the Father's name, they replace it with the Lord, which is the English way of saying Baal. The Father says, don't speak Baal's name. And they print, when it comes to Baal, they do print Baal instead of Lord. There's so much wickedness. I'll tell you, that's why I'm coming out with the book of Genesis. It's going to be, you can download it in E format, and we're going to print it up as a hard copy. We're going to do one book at a time. So Genesis is coming, and Abba willing, there will be no disgusting errors of any kind in that book. Lindy, if someone doesn't have time to be progressively made more like Mashiach after they accept him as Savior, like on a deathbed confession, by being washed by and growing in his word, does it count? Yeah, look at the thief on the stake next to Yeshua. The thief on the tree, I should say. Look, Abba takes care of everything. He doesn't think like our ways are not his ways. His ways are not our ways. If someone doesn't have time to be made more like Mashiach, because they're going to die in 2 minutes, they'll have time, in paradise. Daniel Carrick. Hey, Danny, how's it going, brother? In light of all that transpired in 2017 and the fact that we are still here, where do you see us now concerning last days prophecy? On the edge of the cliff, right on the edge, Daniel. We're about to get blasted with eternity. And I don't try and measure it. I'm not concerned about, when is then. Then is when. That's the only accurate statement there is about when. Alexander, if it's really 5777, shouldn't we have a couple of 100 years to go before the trib to match up with the... Yeah, if you're thinking with a Western mindset, but no. There's a lot of other reasons too. A.A.T. Vieter offered the suggestion that the Jews removed 215 years from the calendar to is this continuation? That they removed 215 years from the calendar to represent the 430 years they were in captivity in Egypt, because Egypt means double. However, I found this Lion and Lamb Ministries article that basically says all the calendars are made yet. Just like ignore anything to do with calendars. They're all a mess. Look, my friends, don't spend time going down rabbit holes and trying to figure out dates and calendars and things. Those are rabbit holes. There's nothing but darkness there. Nobody knows nothing. Stick with the word where we don't have questions that can't be answered. Billy, why did the Jews stop animal sacrifice, and how do they consider sin to be forgiven since then? They stopped it because the temple was destroyed. And I imagine, I really don't know because I'm not hanging out with them, but I imagine they think that the sins can't be forgiven because they're not doing the deal. Their heads are still in that. In fact, I don't remember when it was, 10, 20 years ago, the Jews wrote letters to every nation on earth, 70 letters, which like that blew me away when I heard that, because, at the Tower of Babel, the father divorced himself from everyone on earth. By the way, somebody commented under one of the recent videos and they said, or maybe it was not even it wasn't on my video, somebody else's, and they said, look, God made up those 70 languages and gave them people, so they must be okay. And I'm like, what's wrong with these people? I threw it at Brad last week. Don't they understand? At the Tower of Babel, the father was disgusted with everyone on earth. He divorced himself from everyone and gave them over to gods of darkness, Nephilim, fallen angels, 70 of them, gave them over to 70 languages that are full of darkness and confusion. So, where was I? I guess got lost on that one. And then he went and got Abraham, and he started to create his own nation. Number 71, 7 and 1 is 8, new beginnings, and his language, Aramaic Hebrew, and went forward with that. So anyway, they have no more. Their temple was destroyed, so they can't conduct the sacrifices. Oh, that's what I was getting at. They wrote letters, ironically, to 70 different countries, nations, asking them for help because they want to rebuild the temple so that they can conduct sacrifices and save the world from being destroyed. So, they stopped animal sacrifice because they don't have the temple and they can't do the deal. And yeah, they probably think that all their sins can't be forgiven, but it'll be okay as soon as they can slaughter a couple of lambs, Michelle and others asked for caregivers' testimony. You feel like doing that one, girl?
Sure, I can do that.
All right, cool.
Wasn't expecting that second as I was typing an answer. Well, let's see. Like most of you, I started off in church, and I accepted Jesus as my savior when I was 7 years old, led by my Kodesh mother. And
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. And she's with my stepdad now, and they're both Kodesh. And I spent decades studying of his word. My favorite was the NIV, but I got bored with it. I thought, is this it? I got it. He's my savior. all the Old Testament stuff. I don't understand that. It's probably all for the Jews anyway. Snoozing. So I put myself to sleep with the word. And my husband, Dennis, who, by the way, I want to give a shout out to him because he is supporting this connection, this ministry. I just love him so much. And it could not happen without him as the head of the household.
I love you too, Dennis, and thank you, dear brother, for your precious support, man. Big hugs and kisses from me to you.
And so he was searching. He came from a Catholic background and knew something wasn't quite right there. And he was coming down with the iPad. I found someone, and we went through a number of those until he got to you. And the tears didn't stop. I just thought, where have you been? I learned that Satan's name is God, and I sobbed and I sobbed and I sobbed. And here we are. Really, that's 2.5, 3 years ago now, and the work Elohim has done in my heart. Just figure having scraped off the mud that Satan put on the word that made it boring to me. That this is all there is. And when the real fullness of his word from the Aramaic Hebrew that you delivered came into my heart, he did a work. And
Amen to that.
So I don't know, is there any other question you want to ask?
And then you were walking around, coming out of the woods on a little path with a basket on your arm and a pink staff, looking at this old guy who had a lamb under his arm and a big staff. Hey, where are you going? I'm going to feed Yeshua's sheep. You want to help?
Yes.
And you started jumping up and down saying, oh, can I feed the sheep? Yeah, so here she is, my friends. Yeah, I know. You've shared that with me before, and it's beautiful. And Dennis, shout out to you, brother, for, digging in and, looking for someone like me, because it's like, finding a needle in a haystack, isn't it? Boy.
Sure is. It was a miracle.
In fact, here's Gina. She says, I can't find a pastor that uses the real names of Elohim to baptize me. Well, you could have just put a period after, I can't find a pastor that uses the real names of Elohim, period. You can baptize yourself, Gina. How can I be baptized in the name of Yahweh, Yeshua, and the Ruach HaKodesh if they don't use their correct names? Well, you can take a stick to church and keep hitting them with it. Can I be saved? You're already saved. You, look, I've said this a gazillion times. Only certain ones hear it. I keep thinking about Brad Scott. He's like, he thought that by now there would be a big upsurgence of people interested in the Father's original language and the true names. And he's like, wow, it looks like there's just a small remnant. It really doesn't matter, because the Father knows your heart. He knows you love him. And those people, they may love him too. I don't understand, how anyone can be a pastor and not know enough to know the Father's name or Yeshua's name or the Father's original language. But, you think that these guys know the Bible because they're trained and they're running these churches. They don't know. They never read the Bible. They only read these doctrinal publications of whatever church is financing their ministry. But if you're married, you have a husband, have him dunk you in the name of Yahweh, Yeshua, and the Ruach HaKodesh. But look, there's only one baptism, and that is of the Ruach. Eyes to see. Do you think we'll be given a 7-day notice for the rapture like Noah was for the flood? No.
I got to jump in. My testimony has caused a lot of like-minded responses. People are just thank you so much, Alan.
Oh, I love you too, my friends. You are so welcome. I can't believe how the Father's used me and how he's using me. And please understand one thing, my friends, if you don't already. People ask me pretty frequently, it's like, geez, how'd you go from a career in the music business to teaching the Father's word? And I always say, I didn't. There's no difference. You could ask Mark Palladino. He will tell you that when I was 16 years old, or 17, and then you bounce ahead 50 years. I just turned 67 last week. There's no difference. I am the same kid. I am talking the same talk. I'm walking the same walk. There's no difference. I was doing this with the Father's word when I was in my teens, 20s, 30s, and 40s. The only real difference now is that I'm in a public place making videos. Like before, I would never bring it up to anyone unless they asked. And I have a few friends throughout all the years that were blown away with when they did ask, you know, something about God, and then I would feed them. But I never, just like today, I don't speak unless I'm spoken to. The difference now is I have a YouTube channel. I put out 3 videos a week, so now it looks like I'm saying a lot more than I used to, but not really. Gregory says, why was I called out? Well, Gregory, there's only one answer to that, and that's because you were humble enough to receive it. The Father looks for those who are humble enough to let him take control. And he grabs them and he calls them. Sandy Sims, who are the 2 witnesses? Study the book of Revelation with me and find out. Tobias, is the Hebrew for love our neighbors the same as the word for love our enemies? I don't know. Give me the 2 scriptures and I'll answer your question. I have to look at the actual scripture to look at the original language and see what's going on.
We have another question about love.
Okay.
That's fairly recent. It's we have to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, and husbands are to love their wives as they love their own bodies, their own selves. But Thessalonians talks about in the wicked end times that people will be lovers of selves. So there must be a proper Kodesh way to love yourself and a wicked way to love yourself. Can you talk about the difference?
Yeah, if I love myself in a way that says my being has value and yours has none, that's satanic. If I treat anyone as though they are meaningless, that is satanic. Now, don't confuse that with me kicking a dog across the street. When a person who is operating in darkness and who is ruled by demons comes up barking at me, I'll hit him right in the head. And that's not me saying that they are less. I'm just speaking their own language. I recognize a satanic attack, and I act in whatever way that I have of getting them out of my corral and away from my sheep. That's not the same as degrading someone. I would never degrade someone, but when I see someone who is operating by demonic possession, the person that owns that body is not present, so I don't deal with them. That's different. But to love others as you love yourself, first of all, you have to learn, most people don't love themselves. The first thing you have to do is to learn to love yourself. And in order to do that, you have to learn who you are in Mashiach. You have to be washed by and growing in the word, and you have to develop a maturity of understanding in the Ruach about who you are before you will ever treat anyone else right. I have 5 older sisters, and from the time I was 13 years old and beyond, I always told them, if you don't find a man who loves the Father, you will never have a man who loves you. Now, that's the only way we can love others as we love ourselves, is that if we love ourselves enough to truly form a relationship with our Father by loving him. Is that cool?
Amen.
Denise, are the demons in Revelation 9 and Amos 7 the same messengers in the pit that Yeshua ministered to while in the grave? And what does it mean that he ministered to them 3 days and nights, answering the ministering to portion of this question? Well, I don't think he ministered to demons. He went to the bowels of the earth, and there's a big chasm. And on one side was hell, Hades, Sheol. The other side was paradise. He ministered to them and led captives, those who were captive in the bowels of the earth. He led them out captive. And when he returned to the Father, or at some point in between, paradise was removed from the bowels of the earth and brought up to the third heaven. Shaul, Paul, was there and describes that. He saw paradise in the third heaven. That's how we know that it was moved. But the demons in Revelation 9 and Amos 7, you know, they may have been in the pit. They may not have been in the pit. They could be in the pit. They could be in the Shamayim. They could be in the universe, in the, you know, in the outer realms, the powers and principalities of the air. I think you, Denise, need to have a better understanding of what Yeshua did while he was down there. And I have a video titled 3 Days, 3 Nights, I think. Yeah. Just study that and pray before you watch it for understanding. Many asked, under the 3 Days, 3 Nights teaching, where and what are the documents and records you're citing from regarding how many were raised with Yeshua? There's no records, no documents. It's old wives' tales from the Jews over the years that some said there were 12,000 that were raised. Now, I'm sure that is not an accurate number. I think the truth would be like, whoa, there was a lot. They were all over the place. I don't think there was a number. It's just Jewish lores, Jewish tales. Lore? What am I thinking of? Lore. Lore. Isn't there a word like tales? Folklore. That's what I was thinking of.
We're running out of time. And there's something from Elisa. Do you have any words before you end tonight for the extremely persecuted believers? There's a lot of them around the world, and we just, what can we say to them to encourage their hearts?
Wow. Persecuted believers around the world. What can you say? We know your pain. And we love you. What else can we say? You know, there's Christians, believers all around the world that are suffering. We can't comfort them. Can they even watch anything on the internet? If they can, we just cry out to them and say, we we're praying for you. We love you, and we know that you are suffering beyond descriptions and beyond our ability to understand. But we love you, and you are in our prayers. And then the most we can do is pray for them with great fervency. That's it.
Amen. And it's almost 8 o'clock.
Close enough. Let's bow our hearts, my friends, and close this fellowship in prayer. Beloved Abba, Father, oh Abba, we praise you and we thank you for our time with you this day. Thank you, Abba, for surrounding us with your Ruach, doing your mighty work in each one of our hearts, opening our eyes, our ears, and our hearts to the true revelation of who Elohim is and what you are doing with each one of us. Open our eyes, Father, to our failings and show us the ways of walking away from avenues of darkness that are being surrounding us in these last minutes. We praise you and we thank you, Father, for your mighty plan. We praise you and we thank you for choosing us, and we can't wait to see paradise with our renewed eyes. As we pray, Abba, and as we come before you in the name above all names, the name you gave your beloved Son, our Adon, Yeshua, that name being Yahweh, the name above all names, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh Echad. And all the Kodeshim said,
Amen.
Amen. Well, my friends, until next week, hopefully here with Brad Scott. Shalom, Chavarim.
Shalom.
Shalom.